Hello, fellow students. Today I'm going to talk about the database America, History, and Life in 3 articles from that database having to do with the New South, Bob Jones University, and race and gender. The first source is called Into the Wilderness, Ronald Reagan, Bob Jones University, and the Political Education of the Christian Right by Aaron Haberman. This tracks the religious rights relationship with Ronald Reagan during his 1980 campaign for president. And they were unfortunately disappointed after the election because they didn't get some of the victories they were hoping. Especially Bob Jones University in 1982 did not get back their tax-exempt status because of their ban on interracial dating. He concludes that the religious right would continue to support conservative candidates and causes, but would seek to get small victories other ways. He comes from with the religious history or a historian's point of view as a PhD candidate at the University of South Carolina and uses a lot of good primary sources. The second article is The Bounds of Their Habitation, Bob Jones's Rhetorical Duel with Billy Graham by Camille Lewis. This especially goes back to an early 1960s sermon preached by Bob Jones on the radio Easter morning, April 17th, 1960. About this issue. It's called Is Segregation Scriptural? And she compares it with Billy Graham and something that was said by him that was published in the St. Petersburg Times just the day before. She concludes here that basically that Bob Jones is for segregation and Billy Graham is for integration, and that's really the main point and conclusion in a nutshell. Camille Lewis is not a historian. It's an historical article, and her points, her arguments are a little stretched, and it does show her bias, really. She does use primary sources here. Just one or two are the main ones overall, but does use those sources. Third and finally, the final article is called If Our Women Remain Pure, Bob Jones and the Construction of Gender in the New South, 1900 to 1925 by Anderson Rouse. This, of course, goes even further back to the early 20th century, and this one focuses on gender roles, which is clear from the title. Bob Jones Sr. viewed moral decay with women's moral standards specifically, and he would contend that women need to not be involved in dancing and be involved also in dressing, lowering their dress standards, and these things would cause men to sin and the whole culture really to fall apart is kind of the main point here. So the author concludes that Bob Jones was an example of how fundamentalist leaders affirm traditional beliefs about gender and encourage men to be responsible, and so that the society would flourish. It is a historical journal and has great historical secondary sources and of course primary sources as well, and really does a good job of making its point. All these articles really demonstrate how issues were dealt with in the New South, and especially with gender roles and race. Thank you for listening.